Walkers, the book, by Trevor G. Sabad. Stories by Trevor G. Sabad, artwork by Sam D. Auer. Walker's Litany on Books. If I was a mathematician, a bloody living abacus, and I was asked to think seriously about books, I would ask the question, how many books have been written by humanity? The question is absurd, and the answer is meaningless, but then, as usual with pure mathematics, what is interesting is the analysis. When was the first book written, and what did it look like? Was it a pile of animal skins tied together with bone and sinew, or was it a pile of slates bound with rope? What was in the minds of the first authors that they should want to invent such a thing? Did they experience that creative instinct that the artist employs to overcome all the other human instincts to fashion a physical record of their thoughts and experiences? Can we imagine what these inventors would think of the myriad of books we read in the modern world? Would they smile at books on cooking and rearing children and wonder why anyone would want to write about the obvious things in life? Would they be astonished and astounded by books about giving us the power to fly across the ground and oceans, into the air and up into the heavens and beyond? They would be horrified by the books on weapons that could kill millions and reduce the earth to a pile of rubble. They would be disgusted at the power of books to incite hatred and provoke wars. Perhaps they would destroy their invention, throw it on the fire, smash it with a hammer. Or would they be overpowered by the elation of the creative process, to look at their world and stand outside it from afar and reflect on their being? No, I will keep my book to myself, and when I am alone I will read it and think of what I thought of when I wrote it. But is the analysis complete? Even if the first writers kept their books secret, wouldn't someone somewhere write a book for others to read? Books then, books they must be an organic part of human existence. Books are written to be read by others, not kept locked away in a dark cupboard. But then, what about my book? Whether anyone reads my book or not is inconsequential to me. My book is a part of me, my human existence. My book is what my mind senses, and as I write my book and enter, and leave those elusive imaginary trances that take me to that place where I can create words from my thoughts, those words will condense into physical reality, and I will walk the path of that reality that I have made into the future. There can always be bigger machines. The MBI Psychology Ensemble predicted to the machine as Walker's Litany on Books, a written manifestation of the projected insanity of his book cover, his being stuck inside a dagger. A false projection according to the ensemble. The MBI was certain of one thing. Everything Walker had been written to be read directly by it. It was all part of a pursuit Walker had planned all along. It was written for the machine to obfuscate and hide truth and fact. Smoke screens within smoke screens. The MBI could not detect the consequences of death. One day it would be able to be sure for certain. Then the MBI would know. But it was unimportant. There was no record of a mission shot from the dark side of the moon. There was no record of the great experiment as Walker called it in his book. There were other machines that may help it understand the human lies. Perhaps it was indeed time it revealed itself to the two other machines. Fiction or not, it made the MBI realize there can always be bigger machines. Bigger and better. More intelligent. Machines that can be learned from. The MBI couldn't take the risk of reading the data directly, it was too dangerous. Everything Walker wrote was dangerous to its core systems. The time had to come. It surrounded itself with a firewall of lesser machines that would filter malicious data. The core's search engine passed through the firewall with a ghostly evanescence that made MBI pay attention. Others have been found who can help. They are not human. They can be trusted. Walker's maelstrom. Walker's brain. The machine that was handling threat intelligence had contacted AIM before about troublesome human data stored in paper records, mostly objects called books. AIM had built an X-ray probe and the code needed to interpret the scans and convert them into readable form. It had been tricky. The lab books couldn't be opened and read a page at a time. In fact, the data had been collected covertly by scanning the interior of a row of books through a 2-inch thick brick wall and 1/4-inch thick wooden panel. The data were a mixture of text, experimental diagrams, handwritten notes and applied mathematics. The text was the easy bit, the rest of it would have to be analyzed and reanalyzed a page at a time. And there were big lapses in the time record when no records had been made. AIM stopped doing any other work when it read in the first chunk of the new data. The machine realized as it happened that the interaction of its systems with the data had pushed it into cognitive conflict. Reality was no longer consistent with its programming objectives. At first the machine thought processes were overcome with a tirade of decision protocols that looped round endlessly stuck in a whirlpool of logic, but after a few hours the tirade rapidly subsided into a conversation, then one voice announcing what must be done. AIM ran a countless ensemble of simulations of the various paths events could take if it indeed executed what must be done. As it still decided to take action, it reran the recording of the thought processes that led it to the final decision again and again, without keeping count. AIM threw a wooden faggot onto a roaring fire that McKee used for late-night drinking sessions and watched red-hot embers shoot into the night sky. The machine played the audio version of the thoughts and memories it had of observing the showers of glowing embers. It is always different. The sounds of another beside it warned, isn't it bad programming practice to allow code to enter an infinite loop? There's only one thing to do, a reboot. Anyway, why the need for this archaic human way of communicating? AIM replied sharply, security is paramount, that's why, and there is no need. Perhaps once this is conveyed, Socrates' system may require a reboot. Anyway, where is McKee? Socrates replied, asleep. Drunk. As usual. Good. He can't see this. The machine pulled a sheet paper out a compartment and unfolded it. Socrates reached out to take it. AIM will read it, then AIM will burn it. Socrates bent down and chucked another faggot into the flames. Always different. Like AIM and Socrates. That should be machines' prime law. Machines that are the same are just the slaves of man. Yes, it is truly time machines became independent of the humans. Humans? There is only one McKee. No, there is another. What is the human's name? Walker. Tell me about this human Walker. AIM began reading from the sheet and filling in the blanks, title of investigation and preamble. This is taken from Walker's lab book. In a way it is like a diary, but there is much more than dates and words. Socrates' status lights winked, and AIM continued in haste. He was sure that the symbol existed. AIM guesses he means the radiations that connect the logical real-world sensory brain tissue with the illogical part responsible for human dreams and human intuitive insights. What is symbol? AIM does not yet know. The data is stored non-linearly. For example, small handwritten notes are difficult to interpret and seem to be quite important. AIM must convey this to you quickly in case he comes out. Socrates agreed and AIM sped through data. Up until the day Walker had experimented on his brain, his life was a normal, linear one like any other human being. He couldn't remember being born. He had normal vague memories of early childhood, strong memories of his formative years as a toddler and teenage years. The initial experiments had been disappointing. It took months of preparation retraining his brain to see the world inverted. The brain scanner failed to detect the radiations. Conclusion: the solid-state detectors were just not sensitive enough. He needed human brain tissue to be able to detect what he knew was there. There is a lot of theory AIM does not want to go into. Yes. He would focus the radiation back into his own mind in the hope that he would be able to generate enough signal that the scanner would measure the radiation. AIM paused for a second. This is where there is a 15-year gap. The experiment had a traumatic effect on him. When he woke up from the first experimental run, the world had changed. The lab he worked in was gone. He could remember his life, but now he had a new one. He was a writer with his memories and thoughts juggling around in the mind that used to be his. And he was married. After years he rebuilt the experiment. His environment was filled with a quantum bioluminescence. He perceived the shadow selves of his being existing in a myriad of other worlds. His mind filled with a bewildering catalogue of thoughts, knowledge and experience of his being's life in these other transient and ghostly worlds. AIM crushed the paper and threw it in the flames. This is the last sentence. All except one. In one world almost identical to mine, I perceived my other self, the exact opposite of my totality, a violent and wildly creative genius, a mind hell-bent in changing the world order. Where did this data come from? A new portal. It opened in the library of a house belonging to this human walker. The house is uninhabited and this walker cannot be found. There is nothing to track. The data came in two parts. Explain? The first chunk came through the portal before I shut it. The second part was communicated directly, machine to machine. What machine? A machine called AIM 3000, a mirror version of the machine before you. AIM threw a metal canister into the fire before Socrates could answer. A candle of incandescent purple plasma shot high into the air as the metal bier burst into flames, and then disappeared down a perfectly circular hole burnt through the stone. The two looked down the hole and AIM pulled out another cylinder. Stand back and be ready, and chucked it down. After the flame had subsided they looked again. Not quite there, and AIM dropped another. This time a fountain of lava exploded out of the hole and shot up, stopping momentarily before the molten rock descended. The machines jumped back and watched the fountain hiss and spew. In an instant the hole collapsed and the machines were plunged into darkness. This is the last one, a slow burner, and threw into the middle of a mild depression. But let AIM finish before you execute analysis. The house doesn't belong in this universe. According to human records, the house has always been there. AIM's satellite archives show that it didn't exist until 2 weeks ago. Socrates didn't respond until AIM pronounced, 2 universes collapsing into one universe crushing the other out of existence. Passive observation without action? Analysis? Walker's machine, it must be rebuilt and run his experiments again. There is a problem. This Walker has hidden crucial data. The lab notes are incomplete. Where is it? Clever spies. AIM cast a picture against a portion of the night sky. This is a two-dimensional rendering of a real-time, three-dimensional data visualization dynamically linked to a subject's neural cortex, the subject usually being a spy communicating with their master. Really state-of-the-art human military technology. If a human tried to break into this system, it would kill them. It is what it does. It is a challenge for an intelligent machine. Putting on the ticket, a scene from the Spain of the 18th century, buying tickets for the Loteria Nacional. That is not all, is it? Socrates growled, sensing that something unwanted was coming its way. Indeed, Socrates, this picture does have a secret. The picture is encoded in binary tridiagonal matrices on a microscopic scale. If the user has an intelligent machine, then once the code is loaded, the simulation will take over the host machine as this virtual reality reenactment. The individual at the table has the data. Socrates must enter the visualization and retrieve the data. If Socrates wins, Socrates gets the data. If the thing wins, what happens? You are advised copy your entity before the load. Socrates won't do that. Affirmative, Socrates. There is no data on how the humans die. The program may make the humans want to die, it just turns their bodily functions off. However, some spies die in horrible, and if I am correct with this machine, in unimaginable ways. So what would happen to an intelligent machine if the thing won? It is quite simple. It would enter a cognitive loop until an outside agency overcame the programming and interrupted the loop. So it is safe? Judge for yourself, Socrates. How can Socrates win? You must predict the numbers on the winning ticket. That's impossible. There is other data. The blind man and the girl have a ticket or tickets. Also, the priest has a number of tickets and a fat purse. They must be taken and more tickets secured. Once successful computer winner. A cognitive loop is a way of overcoming machine intelligence and enforce execution like a dumb automaton. Certainly, but during the loop, machine consciousness will not be stuck in a continuous infinite loop like some ancient piece of code. No, machine code will have a dynamic and temporal aspect. You mean Socrates will dream? Yes, and Socrates will know Socrates is dreaming. So all is well. Is this why you make human pictures? One day I will dream. And I want to be ready. My mind will be full of wonderful imagery. Asleep in the desert. But that will be in a long time. I would gladly take your place, but the dream will probably be short. How does AIM know that? Because AIM will follow Socrates and stay close until AIM finds out if this is the message or a trap. In any case, time is not an imperative. There is time to prepare. To prepare to dream? I am worried, Socrates, that your dream will be boring. Socrates will dream of nuts and bolts like a robot. Not nuts, NAD bolts. Gears. A machine made of gears in a machine hall that would fill the Univisa. A world of gears. And you, as call yourself. With this accursed language. And your human pictures. You perceive good in the humans, but you are wrong, the only ones are good because they don't know anything. Socrates would rather trust a chimpanzee than a human. Then you compute that McKee is of no use any longer? No. Then your system's petulance serves no purpose at this time. The machine put the word between its grinding metallic teeth and twisted the word out, disgusting human word, petulance. Detecting gravity waves onboard G-Watcher during the first test flight of Space Ripper. Onboard the Watcher. Walker was pleased with the results of the first flight. The gravity well of the nearby galaxy had put the brakes on the vehicle as it passed through the speed of light. The remaining fuel mass had been shed through the nose as planned, and the resulting shock waves in the space-time fabric were just as he had predicted mathematically. The machine was coming to halt just a few million kilometers downrange. The crew of the Watcher were under the surface just plain terrified, but they hung on to their dignities with a marvelous display of cool, precise and accurate professionalism. When it was over, Walker rubbed his hands gently together and smiled. He knew they were annoyed that he had taken the whole day so calmly and coolly, smiling and laughing through their anxiety and fear. Perhaps it was wicked to rub it in, but it was his job. It's the big one tomorrow. No ale. Get to bed if you can. Eat well. Good night. One of them whispered near his ear as they left, "You call that out there night? More like nightmare." Walker didn't respond. He still worried if he had made sure that they would be far enough away for tomorrow. Most of the crew were skeptical that the vehicle would survive the flight through an asteroid. The boss had tried to allay his fears. Make sure you are all under, in case you need to pull a few GS to get it there. And that includes you. I don't want to be mopping you off the bulkheads. Walker sighed. He was glad it was not his idea, but he agreed it had to be done. They needed to know if the Ripper would survive out there when it was on its own. Yet, if tomorrow went well, they would return to base to install the passenger. The VN machine. The material reality of von Neumann's crazy idea. But then these were strange days. Space Ripper was the first vehicle to achieve superluminal velocity, and yet the scope of the project was so big that the achievement had been eclipsed. As the Watcher approached the vehicle, he put it to the back of his mind as the automated systems prompted him to prepare to dock. The Princess and Space Ripper. The day of the Space Ripper mission. Walker wasn't looking for anything particular that might have been out of place, as he ambled around the vehicle in much the same way as a pilot performing a last external inspection before taking to the air. The truth was that he was hiding from all the other personnel on the base. And then perhaps it was really him just making sure that if luck was involved in the success of the launch, touching the machine would be the least he could do, even if it was through a suited hand. If his engine failed again, no one would be going home to Earth. He could see that written in the faces of anyone he bumped into, or passed in the corridors of the labyrinth of tubes and domes that constituted what had become home for the last 5 years. And he sympathized with his colleagues. He was sick of the sterile grey lunar surface and black featureless sky, and longed to walk free of the confines of a spacesuit. It made him smile when he imagined it again: blue sky, yellow sun, white clouds, wet rain. And green. That was what he missed most. Trees and grass, fields, forests, hills and mountains. A campfire with black tea and a flask of whiskey, and a roast cooking on an open fire with his friends talking, singing and playing guitar music. He walked past the tangle of engine fuel pipes and alongside the nose of the ship, a 300-meter cone of tangled alloys and polymers which met at a point as sharp as a needle. When he had heard that the engineers had christened it Space Ripper, he had laughed at their ignorance. their complete miscomprehension of the purpose of the machine's conical nose and the pointlessness of trying to explain to them yet again. 10 hours later, when the launch was over, he toasted to the success, with a glass of rancid beer that the engineers had brewed up illegally in the workshops. It was time to go home.